what's happening in the world of payments, it's becoming a race to the bottom, right? A lot of these payment companies are being squeezed on margins, a lot of competition from the likes of Apple Pay and Google Play on the branded side. PayPal in this transformation phase where it's trying to go beyond just being a utility provider to becoming a full-fledged commerce assistant and a commerce platform. The unique thing about PayPal is
Meet Mitesh Shah, an experienced AI product leader who has worked at Block, Uber, and Amazon. Currently heading AI personalization at PayPal, he leads a $500 million plus revenue opportunity with advanced commerce APIs. He previously launched over 20 AI-driven products at Block, combining technical expertise with strategic business insight to help product managers succeed in the AI-driven landscape.
Are there common mistakes that you're seeing maybe more junior PMs or engineers make when relying or overly relying on some of these newfangled tools that are really, really exciting?
AI world is very interesting where that old thinking of go fast and break things doesn't work. You have to be responsible. The technology itself is just a tool at the end of the day. If you are extremely curious and extremely passionate about solving user pain points, then you will naturally gravitate towards the technology that has the most potential.
What are the most important challenges that you're trying to solve for your primary users?
The one biggest challenge that we saw.
Before we jump into today's episode, I want to share something that's going to help you elevate your AI strategy. The 2025 AI Governance Benchmark Report from Modeleye investigates why enterprises struggle to scale AI innovation, provides a roadmap to overcome these challenges, and will show you how your AI governance practices compare with industry peers. It's free and only takes a second to download. The link is in the description. Don't miss out. Welcome to Good Decisions, the podcast about the pivotal moments shaping careers, technologies, and the human decisions behind AI and technology. Today's guest is Mitesh Shah, the Senior Lead Product Manager for AI Personalization and Agentic Commerce at PayPal. He is a graduate of both the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, and the Harvard Business School. Mitesh combines deep technical roots with strategic product vision, leading large-scale AI programs across Amazon, Uber, Block, and now PayPal. From launching APIs that power 500,000 small businesses to scaling intelligent digital commerce agents, Mitesh's mission is about accessibility, making cutting-edge AI usable and effective for builders everywhere, from startups to global retailers. Mitesh, it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to Good Decisions. How are you today?
Jay, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here. I love the focus of this podcast is on actual decision-making process. So many conversations skip straight to the outcomes and they don't really explore the messy middle where the real choices happen. So that's really where the valuable lessons are. So I'm looking forward to digging into some of those pivotal moments with you. So super excited for this conversation.
Fantastic. Yeah, can't wait to dig into your values and your frameworks. So let's just start with an introduction, though. Can you tell us about your current role at PayPal and what exactly a Senior Lead Product Manager for AI Personalization and Agentic Commerce does?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you mentioned, I'm in this 0 to 1 team at PayPal. And, PayPal is in a bit of a transformation moment right now. PayPal, as most of the folks already know, is like a payment provider. And what's happening in the world of payments is it's becoming a race to the bottom, right? A lot of these payment companies are being squeezed on margins. There's a lot of competition from the likes of Apple Pay and Google Play on the branded side, and the likes of Stripe and Adyen on the unbranded side. So really, PayPal is in this transformation phase where it's trying to go beyond just being a utility provider to becoming a full-fledged commerce assistant and a commerce platform to some extent. So that means adding value to both sides of the ecosystem, both the users as well as the merchants. So my role at PayPal is, I was hired onto this completely new team that's trying to leverage all the data that PayPal has about its users and really drive personalization in a responsible way. And we're looking at a bunch of personalization ideas, including giving product recommendations based on your transaction history, or giving you recommendations on what is the best way to pay using your PayPal wallet, If you have 10 different credit cards, what is the best, what is the way you can get the most rewards on a particular checkout, right? So by bringing in this value added features, we want to be differentiated. We want to be ahead of the competition. So that's really what I focus on. And increasingly, my focus has also shifted on agentic commerce. So now we're in this completely new world where instead of humans, AI agents will be transacting on behalf of humans. So that opens up a whole different set of challenges to tackle. Right from how do you prevent fraud? How do you know whether this agent was actually authorized by a real human? What are the transaction limits, and so on and so forth. So it's a super exciting phase. We're very early on in this 0 to 1 journey. We're exploring a lot of different ideas. We have a lot of really cool demos, but you'll see a lot of these things going out in the market in early next year. So yeah, as a senior lead product manager, I'm responsible for basically focusing on how do we get the most out of our data? How do we position ourselves as a differentiated player in this fintech space? So that's really what I focus on, Jay.
So lots to go through there. So I think we've all seen the ads with Will Ferrell about paying anywhere and everywhere. And I know PayPal's talked about PayPal World, which is this global commerce platform. You talked about how you're kind of in this phase of going from this perception of being just a payments transaction platform to a commerce platform. When you say commerce, you mentioned things like personalization, automation with agents. Like how does that differ from a payments platform as you're going to this bigger vision of a global commerce platform? What's different there?
Yeah. So the big shift that we want to drive as part of these efforts is how do you change the perception of PayPal, right? Like you think about PayPal when you finish your entire shopping journey and then you're on the checkout page and there you're presented a bunch of payment options. And, at that point, you just pick the one that you feel might be the right payment option for your purchase, right? Now, when we say we want to become a commerce provider, we want to be, we want to get the mind share of both the users and the merchants way upstream. So when you land on, let's say, a lululemon.com, can we position ourselves there and, start identifying you as the user, and let's say, you're a user who has transacted previously with a bunch of other fitness products, right? Like we probably know something like your price propensities, what kind of styles you like. So we want to use a lot of that data to help Lululemon personalize their experience for you as a user, and also help you as a user to make your e-commerce journeys more easier, more seamless, so that you don't have to spend a bunch of time explaining, filtering through a bunch of things if you're on a traditional website, or if you're in the agentic world, trying to explain the chatbot that might be live on Lululemon that, hey, here's my style, here's what I like. So we want to cut out all that process and be a very value-added player throughout the person's shopping journey. You can even extend that beyond the website itself. Let's say you see an ad on Instagram for a Lululemon product. Can we establish your identity right then and there itself? Can we, load your wallet in the Instagram ad itself and provide you a way to pay in the ad itself without having to navigate into Lululemon's website? So that's what I mean by being like a full commerce platform where we can take care of like your end-to-end shopping journey and not just be an afterthought when you're at the payment or the checkout page.
Yeah, journey is definitely the right term. And just, we've only been at e-commerce to the last, 30 years ish, 40 years, 30, 40 years, I guess at this point. But we're so used to that human interaction, even, searching for something, manually finding it yourself. Sure, you might get some personalized recommendations on a site, but then you go and check out, you pay, like put your credit card in, and it's like, it's just become second nature to all of us. And potentially talking about a multitude of different things. One, just maybe some better personalization based on past clothes you've purchased, but that transaction journey fundamentally changes. Are you implying like, hey, I could go into ChatGPT and say, hey, I want to purchase like my favorite shirt from, the best deal that I can find, and through one of those, large language model services, it can go out and find it almost purchase it for me? Is that kind of the direction that you're headed?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're exactly right. I mean, there is this, we don't necessarily believe that the whole traditional shopping model is just going to go away. But, there's this new modality that if you talk to a lot of like Gen Z users, they almost always start their shopping journeys in a Chat GPT or a Perplexity, and they would often just say, "Hey, I'm planning a trip to Greece. Can you help me book hotels, like find some good clothes?" And they expect the agents to now kind of understand them and then also give them the right set of brands, right set of products. So that is definitely the next set of opportunities that we are trying to go after is, can we partner with chat gpts and perplexities of the world and say, hey, like, we know the user, right? Like they are transacting with us day in day out. So when they ask you these kind of questions, we can not just know what they're searching for or what they're typing into chat gpt, we actually know what their transaction history is, which is a much more higher signal attribute, because that's where the rubber meets the road, right? Like you could be searching about a lot of like budget apparels, but if your actual behavior is more on the luxury side, like that's an important signal that we can marry and make sure that the recommendations you're seeing as part of the agentic workflows match your lifestyle, match your price propensities, and things like that. So that's also definitely another direction that we are actively exploring. And you must have seen a lot of announcements, partnership announcements done recently with Perplexity in this space.
I'm curious, like, where do you, from the outside looking in, and maybe for folks maybe not in the AI world, day to day, it feels like such a transformational shift in purchasing behavior, buying behavior, just how we navigate brands and the world online. So where do you start? You talk about, hey, you're seeing younger buyers, like this is a natural behavior for them. Like, where do you start with this transformation process of the old world of commerce, digital commerce, to this new world? Like, how did you break, like, all right, there's so many places you could start. Where are you starting? And how did you come to that conclusion? This is the best place to kick things off.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of this is evolving at breakneck speeds, right? So,
And nobody knew what he was until, what was it, November, December, or a couple months ago, 7 months ago, 8 months ago, I guess.
right, absolutely. Like this whole new framework called MCP and A2A have just burst onto the scene. And now, you can, we've not even, I don't think we've even built out the capabilities right now that can make an end-to-end commerce journey even possible, right? It's still being built out, but you want to be, let's say you're a founder or a product manager, and it doesn't really matter like what space you're in, but you've always got to kind of keep an eye out on the art of possible, right? Like what will commerce look like 10 years from now? And if you really start like putting these pieces together, the advancements that we are seeing on the LLM side, now we've gone from instruction following to very, very deep reasoning. And then this whole ecosystem that's getting built around MCP tools. Most large companies are creating publicly available servers that can hit their APIs just through these conversational interfaces. And you can now quickly see, and all of this behavior, that the shift in behavior that we are seeing with younger people. Even, my mom uses ChatGPT now. So you can see how quickly this technology has diffused. And if you add all of this together, if you want to be a company that wants to stay relevant, or if you want to be a company that builds products for the future, you really need to understand what this future will be and start building towards that. But then also be okay with the ambiguity that you might build a certain way and get it completely wrong. And then you have to kind of go back and, rehash some of the things. And we've made our fair share of mistakes in assuming that, we want to do this piece of the puzzle, and then we were wrong because there's someone that can do this better, and we are actually more suitable in some other place. So I think it takes both, just keeping yourself up to date on what, and also just dreaming up the future. That's a really important skill now that coding is automated and everything is automated. Like you just need to be able to dream up what that new future state would look like, and but then also start executing towards that in these small steps, and being very, very open and okay with the fact that you will fail multiple times, and then you'll have to pivot until you iterate yourself into like a niche that really works for you and your company. So I would say like that's the way to approach this moment of transformation.
Yeah, and you've only been at PayPal, I think, for about 8 months or so, which in the tech world or AI world is an eternity, but in human life is still a very, very short amount of time. So as you've kind of dug into some of the challenges and the vision that PayPal is laying out, like where are you starting from I guess, a product perspective with their users? What are the most important challenges that you're trying to solve for your primary users with this type of commerce?
Yeah. So I think the main thing that we want to solve for is, users, there's going to be a proliferation of agents, right? So you will see agents in the form of the chat GPT and perplexities of the world and Claudes of the world. So these are, think of them as, front door into AI, right? And then you're going to see agents popping up on all the websites that you already use. So like Amazon might have an agent, right? And then even smaller brands are probably just going to have an agent that you can set up, right? So the one biggest challenge that we saw was, as a payment provider, one, like all of these agents are going to need some way to transact, right? That's problem number one. And that infrastructure doesn't exist right now, right? So it does exist, but it's not fully mature. And paying can take a bunch of different forms, right? There's subscription payments, there's like one-time payments, there's
Yep.
all kinds of use cases where you want to send an invoice to someone and then they pay against that invoice. So there's like the payment links use cases. When you're doing payments, there's obviously a lot of the underlying fraud detection that you need to do. So the job to be done, number one, is how do you take all of these things that were built in the era of internet and then take it to the world where agents are going to proliferate across the board. And they, like most agents, will not just want to give you information back, but they will actually want to conduct transactions on your behalf. So how do you open that toolkit, the PayPal toolkit, to these automated agents? That's job number one. And the job number two is, with the proliferation of this AI technology, how do you try to like understand a person deeply so that you can take away a lot of hallucinations from that the agent might run into, or just the cognitive load when you're actually trying to make decisions in real world, right? So that's, I think, the second order problem that we want to solve for. And the unique thing about PayPal is, if you think about Amazon, or if you think about Macy's, or any of these commerce providers, they have a very unilateral view about your shopping behavior, right? Like you might go to Amazon and you might only use it to buy $20 t-shirts, right? Because that's how you associate Amazon. But then you might be completely going out and splurging on, extremely Loro Piana sweaters or something like that, right? But that's a disconnect that Amazon will never know. But the good thing about PayPal is we are able to see your end-to-end transaction behavior. And that's a huge superpower where we can try and piece together a set of dimensions about you and use that to give you very personalized recommendations when you're trying to find the best hotel to stay in Greece, right? Like we'll know what kind of budget you have and what kind of products that you're interested in. That is the vision that we are trying to build, and that's the problem that we're trying to solve for the user.
Interesting. So take me beyond just some of the challenges. Like I love how you broke down the different types of payments. It's one way to think about it. Hey, let's start here. Maybe subscriptions have the most friction. We can make that better for the user. We've got enough data because once I run out of, you run out of toilet paper or paper towel, you're like, hey, I wish I had ordered this yesterday. So I absolutely see that. But you talked a lot about personalization. We have a lot of data on this user. So the flip side of that coin of personalization is trust, and thinking about the different risks or the risk tiers of these different use cases. We've all like seen the flash crash from around when did that happen? Around the time the financial crash in the late aughts. happen. So anytime the money in transactions are getting involved, the risk goes up exponentially. So curious how you think about risk and data privacy as you're making these decisions, because I think you'll have half of your user like, hey, this is great, I love it, I trust it. I'd rather make this a smooth transaction. But you'll probably have half the group saying, hey, you know what? I don't want PayPal knowing this much about me. How do you make sure that you're serving both of those segments and applying the right risk tiers to make sure that you're protecting your customers?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely the central question that we try to answer inside PayPal, because PayPal has been known for being the trusted way of paying, and we see this behavior a lot where people will choose PayPal when they're shopping on a website that they're not really sure about, where they feel that the risk is high. That's where when they turn to PayPal rather than putting their credit card down on the web form, right? So the trust part is critical to the core business that PayPal has. And we don't want to burn that trust to build AI products that are coming out of PayPal, because, as you can imagine, one bad PR and like one bad way that we've handled the data in an irresponsible way can lead to breaking the trust in the core business. So that's where, we build responsibility and fairness and checking for bias and also user control as a product feature right from day one. So, our vision is to not just sell your data to ChatGPT or Perplexity and say, hey, here's the data, do what you want to do with it. That's definitely not the vision. Like the vision is, really kind of understanding you personally as a user, and also anonymizing and creating cohorts for the users whenever it's possible. Like there are some use cases where we want to get super personalized, hyper personalized, but then there are some use cases where we don't want to know that much about the user's behavior, right? So just making sure that we are using anonymization and building cohorts as a tool. That's definitely one approach. The second approach is giving complete user control to our users. So whenever we are inferring an interest, let's say we say, hey, we think that you are interested in these type of products, right? You have full control of saying, you know what, I don't want this to influence any of the personalization that you're doing on me. Uh, that's one. You can completely opt out of personalization as well. And that's something that historically companies haven't done. Like you can on Google, you can say, show me less of this or show me more of this, but you can't totally opt out. But we are taking this approach of like giving our users full control of what this personalization is going to drive. We will also show them a rich history of where were we able to use your profile to drive what kind of recommendations. So if we were able to influence the results that you saw on ChatGPT, that will be logged as a history, and we'll say, hey, we used your affinity towards this particular interest to influence your decision, and this is what the decision was influenced. And they can say, hey, I don't want this to happen in future, or yeah, sure, this is great, do more of this. So, and in our internal research, we have seen these behaviors where there are people like me. I don't mind sharing all my data because I love these AI products, and I love that they can actually tailor the product for me instead of going through a huge catalog. But for example, my wife, she will just decline everything. So our goal is that we build products in such a way that over a long arc, over a long horizon, we are able to switch more and more people to opt into these AI experiences, because AI is powerful. It can do a lot of things for you, but there are real, in the wrong hands, I think, it can do severe damage. So we want to earn a right to play in this domain. And we know that it'll take a long time for us to win that trust. And that's okay. I mean, that's the product strategy where, we want to invest that time. We want to go slow wherever we need to, but make sure that we are building a product that is sustainable, that has the user's trust in the long run, because some of that has been burned by, you know, uh, how we've done AI in the past couple of decades, I feel like.
Yeah, I've heard the term like responsible by design or control by design. is kind of a phrase led by by AI teams of whether it could be sometimes technical folks or sometimes more compliance folks, but building that into your design framework and decision making seems to be gathering steam, at least in the Fortune 500 world.
Yeah, exactly. And, a lot of teams take this approach of getting approvals from the prod sec teams or compliance and legal teams, right? But we see this as like the N in the box, right? Like that's a term that enterprises use where, you need to have the product manager, the designer, the engineer, the data scientist in a room to make decisions. We've expanded that. We think that, having your legal folks and your, security folks embedded into the product design from day one is absolutely the right way to build products in today's day and age. So that's where you need to be a little bit ahead of the curve and really build with responsibility as a feature, not as like an afterthought.
As a product manager, I mean, obviously, PayPal, you've got legal teams, client teams, technical teams, so many people at your your fingertips. How do you stay up to date on regulations, especially at the state level here in the U.S. and obviously being a global company globally? But you have the Colorado Consumer AI Act. You've got, and California has passed a slew of different legislation. I think the most probably relevant to what you're working on is AB 2013, which talks about disclosure of training data for generative AI or LLM models. So how do you work that into your build process? Do you rely on your legal team? Do you do your own research? And how do you make sure that your products are complying with this patchwork of regulation that we have?
Yeah. I think, yeah, I mean, that's where, again, like this goes back to being proactive, being more prepared. So, I think this is such a rapidly evolving space that I think it's important for everyone in the company to be aware of what's being discussed. I think that just practically, I feel like regulations can be a little bit more, overprotective sometimes. They can be designed in a way that throttles innovation sometimes. But what you need to understand is what is the spirit behind some of these regulations that are upcoming, right? So leverage your legal teams, leverage your compliance teams, or, just stay up to date. If you're an AI product manager, just stay up to date on what is being discussed, right? The Colorado AI regulation, talks about how do you incorporate reasonable care about algorithmic discrimination, right? Or do you have a way of impact assessment of your model, or is there a human appeal process for high risk AI systems? So sure, a lot of these regulations might come in 2026, but you want to start following this in the spirit and make this part of your DNA, rather than kind of scrambling when these regulations actually land. So I think, especially in the world of AI, you need to be a little bit ahead of the curve so that when these regulations actually come in, you are like, oh, we've been thinking about this. So this is not a big deal. Like we're already compliant to most of this. And so that's the place you want to be in, rather than scrambling when these regulations actually become reality.
The regulations are evolving quickly. The technology is evolving faster. You've only been at, like I said, PayPal for a relatively short amount of time. Again, a long time in the tech world, but your background, or at least your undergraduate degree, was in mechanical engineering. How did you go from physical engineering background to get into data science and product management? I know you went through business school, obviously, but the tools and technology that you're using today didn't exist when you were in school. I don't know, what sort of continuous learning or decision methodology do you use when, like, hey, new technology is coming out, I want to maybe have my career follow this, or I want to be prepared to handle that? How do you know when something new is coming out? How do you separate the hype from a new technology versus something, hey, there really is something here that I can build on? How have you made those decisions, or how have you evaluated new technologies to move your career closer to those so you can take advantage of them?
Yeah, I think, that's actually, when I reflect on this, and I've kind of jumped into like different types of industries and different kind of environments, even made the transition from working in India to working in the US. So one thing that I feel like is, I think, if you are following a non-linear career, it's okay, because you need to think about this as like you're building a toolkit of different skill sets, and you are able to leverage on experiences that you learned in different phases of your career, um, and use that in very unexpected ways, right? So that is something that I've definitely kind of realized is, to give you a very concrete example, I worked at, like, in like hardcore manufacturing operations as part of my earlier career, and now I'm in like Silicon Valley, like building all these tech products. If you worked in Silicon Valley, you know this, right? Like, a lot of times you get kind of boxed into this way of thinking, and everyone you talk to your neighbors and you talk to your friends, and everybody has an opinion about the latest GPT-5 model and what it's good at and what it's not good at. So it's easy to assume that everyone in the world is actually as up to date as you are, or your friends are, but that is not the reality. I've come from this environment which is very tech deprived, and tools don't proliferate into these environments at the
Yeah.
same speed at which we see in Silicon Valley. So that has something that has stuck with me, that whenever I try to make a big product decision, I try to reflect on my days and working on the manufacturing operations, and I think, is it ready for that? Like, is that an environment where I can actually use this product? Can a small business use it, or can someone in a small town somewhere really use these products? So, like, those are the kind of things that have stuck with me and that have really helped me make those product decisions. And then I think, the technology itself, something I realized is the technology itself is just a tool at the end of the day, right? If you are extremely curious and extremely passionate about solving user pain points, then you will naturally gravitate towards the technology that has the most potential. You will gravitate towards environments where you think you have the scale and the capacity, and that has the culture to actually go solve problems that real users face. So I think that has been my guiding principle, where I started my career at Amazon, and I started kind of building empathy around, hey, what does it take for a small business, maybe a husband wife duo that's trying to sell matcha out of their garage, right? How do you make them successful, right? If you just think about that one problem, and then you'll quickly realize they need a way to orchestrate their inventory. They need to know when to reorder their items. They need to know how to best create their website, how to make it more compelling, how to advertise, how to take payments. So when you put yourself in the shoes of this non-technical entrepreneur who is just trying to hustle and make their business work, and you just say that, hey, like, I'm passionate about solving for them and giving them the right tools, then it really doesn't matter, like, whether you're working for AI or working for something else, because you're obsessed about, like, making their lives easier and helping them succeed. And that has been the through line of my career as well. Like, I try to kind of find projects that are interesting, that are trying to move the bar when it comes to, like, succeeding in commerce, that helps small businesses, solo entrepreneurs, underrepresented businesses in some sense, and that's why I've kind of gravitated towards the careers that I've gravitated towards.
Has that always been a value of yours, of helping, small businesses or individuals adapt to new technology or take advantage of it? Was there something in school or a specific example when you were at, I think you worked at Renault, and then in some other, like you said, manufacturing automation companies? But what, were you always like that, or did something happen? Was there an event that said, "Hey, this is my guiding principle. This is what I need to follow"?
Yeah. So, I think it's a combination of things, Jay. So for me, like I said, I started my career in manufacturing, and, this was an environment where, yeah, yes, sure, like, we had some of the best in class manufacturing equipment, but it was an environment where we would still write things on a register. And then, at the end of the day, I would, like, collect all those register, put things in an Excel, and try to, like, root cause why we had, like, a 15% drop in our production rate today. So that was my reality for the 4 or 5 years that I was working in India, right? And I, even back then, and this was, the like early 2010s, even back then, there were machine learning algorithms, right? I had my like people who I went to school with working at the Googles of the world, and they would talk about machine learning and how big data is changing with Hadoop and Spark and all of these things. But I was like, okay, the reality on ground is completely different. And that's where I thought, sure, like a lot of these, being on the frontier of the technology is exciting, and that's where the real innovation happens. But there's a big gap in the middle where how do you take these technologies that Silicon Valley is innovating on, and how do you diffuse it down to the regular businesses? So I think I really saw a gap there, just based on my more personal experiences. And, also it just felt like, even when I was working at Amazon, I felt like the mission of making products more accessible to consumers didn't resonate with me as much. Like I felt like, oh, like with Amazon, you're giving more products to consumers that are already have a lot of choices. That didn't excite me. What excited me were the stories on the seller side. I was like, okay, like, there's someone who wanted freedom, like wanted to start their own business. They wanted to try an idea, and now they're able to do it and reach to a worldwide audience. And those were the stories that really stuck with me. And I was like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. This is more empowering, and this is the role of technology. Technology should be a way for people, way for businesses to go global from day one. That's just something that stuck with me, and that is something that I've been kind of following, and has been satisfying.
Yeah. Was there a specific story at either Amazon or Block or Uber that really kind of jumps out to you as a really well learned lesson?
Yeah, I mean, when I was working at like Square, right? Like Square is, we see a lot of these micro entrepreneurs use Square. So you can think of Square being used at like farmers markets or food trucks, right? And I used to sit through a lot of these interviews that we would do with sellers to really try to understand their pain points. And I was, again, like working on AI products there. I was working on the AI platform. How do you make AI more accessible? And what really jumped out to me was, you know if you ask somebody, like, we had this beautiful product design of how we wanted to transform our dashboard. Like, we have a dashboard. Inside your Square dashboard, you could look at all kinds of analytics on, hey, how did I do across my 10 different stores? And then, like, what were my sales? What is my seasonal patterns across my different products? And when we were trying to think about AI, we were honestly making it too complicated. And then there was this moment where, when we were talking to these micro entrepreneurs, we realized that, they want something very simple. They want something that tells them, hey, how did my business do today? And what more can I do? Right? Like, if you just help them answer these two questions, that's it. So, like, these small entrepreneurs force you to simplify a solution, not complicate them. But if you're in the business of selling to enterprises, you might want to do the other way around, whether you want to give a lot of control to people. So, we completely redesigned our approach. We said, okay, we want to solve the very basic question of, how did the business do? And was there an actionable insight that we can give to the seller that they can act on immediately, that would help them, like, improve their business? So, for example, if we see that Tuesdays they are getting a slight decline in their sales in the overall week, we could say, hey, do you want to set up a coupon that allows people to get a 10% discount on Tuesdays? You know, and then, do you want to send a marketing email for the phone numbers and emails that you have in your system to your most loyal customers? So, if you think about the user and then try to solve a problem for them, instead of thinking, oh, AI, and like, so, like, all of these terminologies, they don't care about it. They are trying to do 100 different things. They're trying to close out their inventory, do their taxes, and they have very limited bandwidth to interact with these tools. So you need to be very on point about what is the insight and what is the action that you need to take. And if you solve for that, you will see massive adoption. And we kind of saw this in our small A/B test when we did that.
It seems like the best product managers really simplify everything. Like you said, hey, I just want to solve this one problem. I've got all this data, especially at PayPal and Amazon. You have unlimited data that you have to sort through, and you have to apply that experience or simplify the problem. How what I'm interested in, like, so you have access to all this data. You can probably get it to tell you any different number of things that you want. And you mentioned that, hey, somebody maybe at the enterprise level or a different market segment might have different needs and they want more complex stuff. And that's probably a very, very important business segment for your business. How do you convince higher ups or leaders that, hey, we really need to simplify and focus? I mean, the data might say one thing, but on a human to human level, how do you get them to say, hey, we need to do something very different here? And are there tactics or strategies that you use to help convince higher ups to go a different way when their business is saying, hey, we should really focus on something bigger and different?
Yeah, this is something I feel like, that's the art that you need to get a master as a product manager is how do you think 10 years into the future? So you need to still have that vision of what is the possibility set of possibilities, right? You don't want to be blindsided on that. So you don't want to oversimplify the product to a level where it just kills the value prop. So you want to have that end goal in mind, that end complexity in mind, but you want to peel the onion, right? So you want to start with something very basic, give that first insight to the user within a single click or maybe two clicks at most. you know Think about like when you ask Lovable, right? Like the viral AI agent that helps you build amazing websites. The power is you can just say, hey, build me a app that does food delivery, and it'll give you an app, right? It might not be the best app, but it'll give you something. So I think that is the way you need to build products, is like get people in the door, show them the value upfront, show them that first result within a couple of clicks. And that is usually the easiest thing to ship as well. And then you layer in the complexity. So the way I have used this to convince leadership, for example, is to show velocity. So, leaders always love when you can tell them that, hey, this is something I can ship in 3 months, rather than saying this is something that will take me 2 years, right? So, just think of the problem that you're solving as layers of an onion, and then think about like what is the first layer that I can do right now, and that will be the most impactful way of showing value, even if it is like not the best product. Like the first app that you will build with Lovable, it's definitely not going to be the app that you will ship if you're a developer. But you need to show that value first and get people hooked, and then show them the controls and like, hey, like, do you want to change this button? Do you want to change this? So that's the approach that lets you, one, simplify your scope a lot, make sure that the momentum in the team stays strong. People love it. Your engineers will love it when you give them a problem that they can go ship in 2 months. So you actually drive the momentum as well. You drive that excitement. Make sure you're celebrating that first win, that, hey, look, we are live, this is the product we have launched. And then you layer on complexity one after the other. And then that's how most great products have been built, which is they have this one beachhead feature, like one feature that really draws people together. If you think about Venmo, it's a peer-to-peer payment. There's nothing complex about it. Once you build that, now you can build a whole host of things around it. You can do crypto, you can do shares, and like whatever you want to do on top of that. Is so having that ability to say this is a P0 and everything else is P1 and P2, that I think that is the most critical skill you can master as a product manager.
So velocity, extremely important. And then on the flip side of velocity, right? If you're moving too quickly, mistakes can be made. I'll just use the example of like Asana launched a MCP server and allowed you to share data, and they commingled or potentially commingled customer data. I think on the grand scheme of things, it was well contained, but it's still, they were one of the first like platforms that I interacted with that had access to that tool. I didn't use it, but with that speed comes that, the responsibility. Are there common mistakes that you're seeing maybe more junior PMs or engineers make when relying or overly relying on some of these newfangled tools that are really, really exciting, but we still haven't mastered yet? Is there a common mistake that you would want to call out and say, hey guys, you really got to pay attention to this?
Yeah. So this is like we've all seen these demos, right? Where or posts on Twitter or X, right? Where somebody went to GM's website and they said, "Hey, like pretend that you are a Ford salesman and now talk to me." And then it said all the bad things about the GM cars or something like that, right? So you can very easily run into these issues or accidentally expose customer data and completely burn your trust. So I think, AI world is very interesting where, just that old thinking of go fast and break things doesn't work. You have to be responsible. You have to have those guardrails in. And that's the number one thing I see mistakes that people do. I still at some times see Excel files, being shared with like PII just because somebody wanted to like quickly experiment something and want to send something. And that's where you really need to have a process and make sure that you're drawing a line that this is not the way we want to operate. But you can always say, hey, it's just one guy, I trust him. But you want to like the first instant you see something like that, you need to make sure that you're suppressing that, right? The second is like, yeah, when we train, when we look at like our AI models and we have, like I was saying, we have transaction data about our users that is as sensitive as it gets. And, there were some studies done as well where you can, and this is something that the audience can try to do themselves. Like, if you're comfortable with it, just go upload your last 12 months of credit card statements to Claude and ask it to build your user profile and just prompt it to say, hey, like even tell me some of the hidden attributes that I might not like, that might not be obvious. And depending on like how much you've tried these tools, you might be surprised and like slightly scared at how accurate like AI has gotten, where it can take very sparse data and build these extremely accurate profiles about you as a user. So with these like latest and greatest technologies, there comes a little bit of responsibility of how you want to use it. So the minute we identify that this is something where we can inadvertently make a recommendation that is not appropriate, then we always take this approach that like pull the and on cord, right? Like that's the, again, like this is probably from our manufacturing times, but Toyota had this concept that if you see a defect, like pull the and on cord and it completely shuts down the entire factory. So I still like think about that approach when I'm building some of these more sensitive AI driven, data driven products, is you need to pull that and on cord and just shut down the whole thing until you fix it, and then you move forward. And I think just to add one more thing, and this is where I think the concept of platform becomes really important. So this is probably a little bit more tactical, but if you're a company that has like, let's say 10, 15, 20 different teams within the company, it's probably the best practice to just invest in a platform rather than, like we have a platform that, automatically you just tick one box and we will make sure that every request response that you're doing through an LLM goes through a set of guardrails, right? So if you build that platform and then all sensitive data that we have in our system is controlled by something called as a data allowance manager, right? So don't let your developers directly hit the underlying S3 buckets, or don't let them hit directly in an OpenAI endpoint. Make them pass through this platform layer. And that's the way to make sure that you're 100% compliant. Because, other like we saw this where when like teams are asked to build AI, it's like one product manager, like one front end developer, one back end developer, and they're asked to kind of build AI by their GM. You can't really expect them to think about every possibility. So you need to invest in a very strong platform layer and then just let people access AI through that platform. So that's also like a tactical thing that has worked for me.
Yeah, let's say it enforces your policies. It's one thing to have policies and risk tiering and different protocols, but to actually enforce them, especially across a global organization, is a whole nother set of challenges. So that control platform is, I think, absolutely critical. And you talked about some lessons you pulled from your manufacturing days of kind of the stop button of just shutting everything down. Is there a lesson that you've gained from your AI days that you'd want to hand back down to a younger self as you were getting started in the product management world?
Yeah, I think lots of lessons. So one, I would say, we've talked about this a lot, like focus on the user and the impact. It's very easy, especially for an engineer, to get fascinated by technology. You're taught like technology and you want to work on the best and the brightest things, the most flashiest technologies. But, you know, I think over time my personal goal has become to make the technology almost invisible. Like, technology by itself should never be the feature. It should almost like become invisible in the background of uh, the workflow. So that's the number one thing I would tell to my younger self. Second would be, I think non-linear careers are okay. You learn different things from different environments. When you make a big switch in terms of geography or a career, or you jump from cybersecurity, which you were really good at, to, let's say, AI product management, and now you feel like, oh, like now I'm leveled at the same level as a junior PM, someone slightly a couple of years junior to me. That's fine. I mean, think of this as collecting tools in your toolkit, and it makes for a much richer set of experiences down the line. So I would tell my younger self, not to be super anxious about not following like the promotion ladders or just like playing the linear game. That's when you kind of learn. The third thing would be, don't wait for perfect information. Like you will always operate in completely imperfect environments. Your data will never be great. So invest in, what I call as product sense. That's again a term that gets thrown around a lot, but there are very few people you meet that have extremely strong product sense that will tell you, hey, I don't know why, like your data tells me that this is going to work, but I think it's not going to work, or the other way around, which is like, I know you're giving me all this data, but I know this is the right investment for the company. Let's go do it. So, like, find people who consistently get these product sense type things right. They are usually the people who are great observers of human behavior, and they are great observers of like the history of technology and like what works and what doesn't work, and they synthesize that. So, like, invest in that. Like, this is very intangible, and again, as engineer, we love the more tangible side, but invest in that intangible side. Observe, like, go to your coffee shop, ask them what tools they're using, how do they process payment, what do they run, like what issues they run into. Read TechCrunch or whatever, like get your information from wherever you can, but build a very strong hypothesis about like what works and what doesn't work, and be open to like being challenged, and have a ecosystem where you have people who you can go talk to, and build that product sense even further. And I think lastly, this is something that I've seen myself as well as in some of my colleagues. I think the number one thing you need to make sure that when you're an ambitious person trying to build a career for yourself, like, never compromise either on a personal level or for your company, the integrity and the trust, because I think that's something that's critical, right? Like, the only times where I've had to kind of pull back a product from the market is when we found out that this would break the trust of the user, or this doesn't like kind of jive with the values of the company. Everything else can be forgiven, forgotten, you can rebuild, you can iterate, but like if you lose the trust for your own personal brand or your company's brand, like that's irreversible. So make sure you have a very, very strong set of underlying principles and tenets for yourself, and establish them really upfront. When you're jumping into a project, that's the first question you should ask your hiring manager. Hey, what do you think are the core principles or the core tenets for this product? And if those doesn't align with your personal values, feel free to walk away. You want to be building in an environment that is respects your own value system. We, as part of my project now, I talk to a lot of these data brokers, and it's jarring to me how you connect your played account one day for some finance insights, and now they've scraped up like a bunch of things. So there's all kinds of companies that are adding value in the short term, but you need to make a decision on whether that connects with you on a personal level. So be very mindful of that. So I think that those would be the lessons I would pass on to my younger self.
Yeah, I love that. I love the concept of product sense and then just the focus on trust with technology because that's really what differentiates it. No matter what it is, if you can't trust it, you're not gonna use it. So I think that focus is so important, especially now as the technology is moving even faster and ripe for abuse. So thank you for sharing all of that. I guess to kind of wrap it up, the last question. Yeah, you mentioned like the nonlinear career, and I think in tech that's common now. Like, 50 years ago is these are the steps that you take, or if you're a doctor or a lawyer, you go this. But in the tech world, it's just a total roundabout or roller coaster in a lot of ways. But when you do reach that peak or have a great day, is there like a ritual that you like to imbibe in to celebrate a good decision or a good outcome or a product launch, whether it's, I don't know, a walk in the park or a cocktail or something with the team? Curious what value you place on rituals and what's one ritual that you go to?
Yeah. I mean, it's nothing crazy, but I love the concept of like just taking the team out on a happy hour, right? Like I think it's obviously overdone, right? Like teams will like do these happy hours every time, but I think that's an important ritual, especially if the team is struggling. You need to find even the smallest of the wins and celebrate those, and make sure that you're acknowledging everybody that was in some way a part of that win. So oftentimes, we have this internal Slack channel that internal employees can use when they find something that they feel is an opportunity, or they feel that something is going wrong with the PayPal experience, or somebody like stumbled on something. And that ends up being a great source of insight for me when I'm building my products. So, I this is something that I've realized, that the more you remember, like, who was that one customer service agent that, passed this insight on to you, or who was that one employee that passed it on to you, or, maybe you read a customer research report and that helped shape your thought. Just send a small thank you note, or just invite them out to a happy hour. Say, hey, we shipped this. We are celebrating the win, and I want to personally invite you to this event because I think that one insight you sent me was the reason we made this pivot or made this decision. So that simple like way of making sure you're grateful to the people who helped you build the product, making sure you make it a habit of reflecting on wins and celebrating wins and reaching back to people to say a thank you, that just goes a long way. And also that's during the work time. And when I'm trying to disconnect, I love hiking. I live in Seattle, so I have access to a lot of great hiking around here. So that's another ritual. Like on weekends, I try to get out in the summer, go for a hike. It just tells you that your roadmaps are not important. Right? The nature is so beautiful, and a lot of the silly politics and like the stuff that you're trying to do, it just fades away, and it's great. Like you need that. Sometimes you get too over obsessed, too stressed out, and yet that hampers your decision making abilities. So taking time to actively slow down, um, either during your weekends or during your day, building that as part of your ritual is also something that really helps me. I love making masala chai, in the traditional Indian way, which takes like 15 minutes because I grind my own cardamom and like grate my ginger. Like it's my morning ritual, but I love it. It's intentionally slow, and it gives me just time to reflect on some of the decisions and not just start my meetings for the day. So that's something that I try to do.
You got to have the human touch. I think it's where you can get the best insights and reflect and think that helps make the best decisions. So thank you for the last hour here. This was a great conversation, and appreciate all the advice and wisdom that you've shared. And have a great rest of the week. Thanks so much, Mitesh.
Thank you, Jay, for having me. This is amazing. Thank you so much.